live. Welcome back. This is episode number 57 of Calibrated with Scott. I'm Scott, of course. If you guys wouldn't mind liking, subscribing, and hitting that little notification bell so you don't miss any of my future videos. We're growing fast, and I would like to keep us on that upward trajectory. Just to touch on a few little housekeeping things, I have a new background. I'm going to be upgrading the studio here a little bit here and there, and I've already done some of it. And I'm going to try to make this a little bit more of a professional operation. You know, it's very amateur right now. I appreciate you guys bearing with me through that, but it'll get better over time. And I think we should just hop into it because we have a lot to talk about today, and I'm very excited. The first thing I would like to discuss is the grain deal. The grain deal, for those of you who don't know, is an agreement between Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, and Western partners, the Western community, to allow for the export of grain through the Black Sea without risk of commercial ships and civilians getting hurt and wheat being destroyed, allowing for the market to stay stable and for third world countries to receive proper food security. For those of you who don't know, half of this was never implemented. The Russian half was implemented. They were allowing for the protection and humanitarian corridor for Ukraine and ships to allow shipping out of the Black Sea. They had a safe lane where there were no sea mines. It was a protected area. That is no more. That has expired with the grain deal on the 18th. Now, any ships going in and out of the port of Odessa will be hit. And, it's over. And the reason why it ended is because the West never upheld its end and Ukraine never upheld its end of the grain deal. Part of it was that this grain was meant to go to the third world. It was never reaching the third world. In fact, most of it was going to EU countries, which was, a rather obvious thing that was going to happen. You're trying to maintain European economies. So keeping food price down is very helpful in that. And another reason why the grain deal failed was that Ukraine repeatedly used the humanitarian corridor, which was not mined or protected or being surveilled very, significantly, as a method for sending drones to attack Russian positions in Sevastopol and the Kerch Bridge and other significant targets. So the grain deal's dead. And it has been talked about being dead, rumored being dead for a long time. Turkey released Azov fighters, the 5 commanders that were sent after they were captured at Azovstal. They were sent to Turkey, where they were supposed to stay for the remainder of the war. That was an agreement between Russia and Turkey. Turkey has gone back on that. Turkey has taken a more EU line recently. I don't think that that's going to be a regular thing. That's just a pragmatic thing that Turkey's doing in its own interests. But it went back on an agreement with Russia, which is a very, very bad idea. And these fighters were released. So, at the end of the day, I think Turkey is kind of the big loser here. They lost some of their good relations with Russia. They also lost the grain deal, which was really helping support the Turkish economy. At the end of this grain deal, and this is our next big event, is that Ukraine decided that they were going to strike the Kerch Bridge. The grain deal's over, so it's on, right? They sent some submersible or surface drones all the way around the Black Sea. These drones approached the Kerch Bridge, got under one road section and detonated, and actually did some significant damage to a road section of the bridge. Unfortunately for the Ukrainians, there was no damage to the train section, the rail section. The rail section is the more military target. I don't think there's actually a lot of equipment or logistics being run over the Kerch Bridge right now by the Russian military. They don't really need to. They have a land bridge. So even if the whole bridge were to be taken down and it was inserviceable for months, this doesn't really impact the war. It could impact civilian life in Crimea in terms of what they have in the grocery store, their fuel costs, so on and so forth. That might change, but realistically, this is a PR move by Ukraine. They announced that they were going to do it a little bit before. Xerxes put a post up on his Telegram basically talking about a lullaby for the Russian occupiers. And I guess that's what this was. Compared to the last time the Kerch Bridge was hit about a year ago, the damage is much less significant. And even back then, it really didn't affect much. So this has kind of been a huge morale boost for more of the Ukrainian information space, but not really so much physical, tangible success when it comes to the battlefield and what can be accomplished in aiding their currently failing counteroffensive. I don't see how negotiations ever happen after this between Russia and Ukraine. I don't think that they ever will. I think that regime change is now the goal in Ukraine for Russia in the SMO, and that is going to be how it ends. Regime change, because you have Ukraine actively crossing Putin's directly stated red lines, not just a Russian red line, but Putin's stated red lines about attacking the Kerch Bridge. That it happened. They were gleeful about it. Two Russian civilians were killed. They left an orphan daughter behind. Very sad, but it's a war. Collateral damage does occur. But everybody's celebrating it, and even some of the Ukrainian crowd were celebrating the deaths of the two civilians. It's really quite gruesome and just ugly. I've never seen. I've never personally cheered for any civilian deaths. I think that's horrible. I don't know how they can do that. I don't know how they can, write out a tweet, read it, and then continue to send it. It doesn't make much sense to me, but here we are. So moving on from the Kerch Bridge, we can talk about now the Ukrainian counteroffensive, which I just mentioned is failing pretty significantly. We are on day D plus 45, so 45 days into the Ukrainian counteroffensive. And yet again, we have almost no movement on the line by the Ukrainians. We have continued assaults around Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and on the Zaporozhye line. These all failed. There was no progress. They were sent back with pretty bad results. We saw a few armored vehicles getting destroyed. Actually, a Leopard was hit by a Lancet. And overall, things are just not going very well for Ukraine. I don't know what their plan is. I don't see a plan. It looks like they're just kind of continuing on in a direction, hoping something works out when nothing has worked out up till this point. Around Rabitny, they're still smashing their head against that wall with no success. And really, the more important and much more interesting conversation is what's going on up in the Kremenaya and Svatova line, up in the LPR and into Kharkov. This is actually incredibly interesting because we have Russian advances. A serious Russian offensive is talked about to be starting. I don't know if I really believe if it's, a super serious, the Ukrainians are basically saying that there's 100,000 Russian troops, 900 tanks, 400 pieces of artillery, barreled artillery, and 300 pieces of multiple launch rocket systems in the area to support this offensive, which is a crazy statement because from what they've been telling me, the Russians are about to break any day now. They don't have any tanks left. They can't manufacture anything. They don't have manpower. But apparently they have 100,000 dudes sitting in reserve around the Svatova-Kremenaya line. So you can kind of see the propaganda is starting to play against itself. You can only go so far. You have to defeat your weak enemy if you present them as being weak and enfeeble. If you don't, and then you start losing territory, it's going to look really bad to your audience. And their audience has been waiting for movement for weeks, and it just has not come. And now the Russians are actually making significant progress. They've crossed the Zhibyets River up in the LPR region, which is rather significant. This is the area that they retreated back to during the Kharkov and Liman offensives. They got backed up into the LPR a little bit, and that's where they ended up bogging down the Ukrainian offensive on the Svatova-Kremenaya line and stopped it. If there are 100,000 men in this area, Ukraine better be very, 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 very concerned. because Ukraine does not have manpower in this region at all. What you're looking at right now is almost a reverse of the first Kharkov offensive, where the Ukrainians pushed through a very skeleton crew of Russians. They were undermanned and under weaponed, so they were forced to retreat to not be captured or killed. And Ukraine captured a lot of territory in about 10 days. That's what it's looking like the Russians are going to do now. I'm not saying they're going to blitz and, take all that territory in 10 days, but they are on the move. They are making steady progress. They have crossed the Zhibyets River. They have a very solid bridgehead that is expanding day to day. And they appear to be going up against a very, very weak Ukrainian force. I don't actually believe that there's 100,000 Russian troops in this area. I think that is a massive overstatement by the Ukrainian government in the hopes that when they start losing this territory, they can say, well, look, the Russians are, this many Russians have died and we're attriting them as we're retreating. It's a tactical withdrawal, this, that, and the other, when really they're getting pushed back by the regular Russian units in the region because they are out of artillery. Their shells are focused on the offensive. They're suffering from EW pretty difficult. There's a pretty difficult situation along most of the fronts with the electronic warfare. And, Ukraine just has its focus on Zaporozhye and on Bakhmut, where these offensives are just not panning out. They have put their highest quality troops in this region. They have put a lot of their extra reserves in this region. So places like Donetsk around Krasnohorivka and up in the north around the LPR over the Zhibyets River and along the Oskal down to Kupiansk, the Russians are going to make gains because there is a lack of reserves. There's a lack of support in terms of artillery, fire support, and there is a lack of willpower. A lot of territorial units are getting captured right now, and they're surrendering 5-6 guys at a time. It's a big deal. Morale is really hurting in these regions, and the Russians are going to capitalize on that. I think that everyone should now prepare themselves for a very long, protracted conflict. I don't see the Russians moving fast anytime soon. I think they're going to continue wearing down the Ukrainians for as long as they last. And who knows how long they last? The West is just today announced a $1.3 billion aid package to Ukraine. In this aid package, they will be receiving Vampire anti-drone systems, which is a small air defense, short-range air defense. And it's just a technical, basically. It looks like one tube of an Avenger, which, if anybody doesn't know, that's the air defense system put on the back of a Humvee. But it looks like an Avenger tube, so 4 little missiles and a security camera on a post, all packed into a Toyota Tacoma or Titan or something like that. And it's just goofy. It's getting to the bottom of the barrel. The U.S. has also announced that they're going to be buying back Hawk air defense systems, which Hawk is from the 60s or 70s, I think, from Taiwan, which is goofy because they just came out talking about how they needed to continue arming Taiwan, but in fact they're buying weapons off Taiwan to send to their proxy war in Ukraine. And they are also sending munitions and some kamikaze drones. Really, it's just nothing significant. These aid packages, they're just logistics at this point, are becoming smaller, less significant, less helpful. The price is still there, but it's because everything in these packages is so expensive. That's the issue with Western weapons design, is that it's just more costly than anything that the Russians are producing. And the West cannot outproduce the Russians. So really, this is just a continuation of the war to the last Ukrainian, if you will. I saw today that a Ukrainian serviceman died. He was 16 years old. They're using kids now. That's it's rough. It's just going to get worse and worse. We're seeing old men and basically kids. Everybody's getting picked up now. The situation has gotten so bad in the officer corps that Zelensky has passed a law that during martial law, any NCO that does not have education or basically a degree can be put into a CO's position and a commissioned officer and get to work. So that should kind of give you a hint as to how the staffing situation is going in the higher ranks of the AFU. They're pulling people off the line now who have some experience and putting them into leadership positions. This could be good on a tactical level, but usually on a strategic level, you want people who have schooling, who know what's going, what's going on a bigger scale. They know how to handle the situation more clearly in a leadership role. There's a very big difference from being in a leadership role when you're in a trench, leading a squad or a unit, or even a brigade, compared to really taking charge and doing some stuff. In fact, I said in charge of a brigade. That would be a commissioned officer. A colonel would be in charge of a brigade. But higher level ups in the infantry who are in combat. Those positions are now going to be filled. I don't even know by. I mean, the command staff in the AFU is just getting younger and younger or older, but not in a good way, not in a more experienced way. Still very green, old, and it's just. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just not a good look. Things are not working out the way that the West had hoped in Ukraine. It's getting worse day to day. And now what it appears to me, at least, is that the Russians now have the full initiative in Ukraine. The Ukrainians are still trying to assault in areas, but they're making no progress. Meanwhile, the Russians are making progress in a number of different areas. It just is not boding well. The Ukrainians are also going to come up against an ammunition issue here soon. They were running on about 6,000 shells a day for a very long time, trying to conserve ammo for this offensive. We are 45 days into this offensive. Ukrainian artillery has been working incredibly hard and not achieving the results that it needs to achieve. But yeah, outside of that, I think that's going to be my wrap up for today. I really appreciate all of you. If you guys wouldn't mind liking, subscribing, sharing this video, it's the easiest way you can support me. And if you guys really do like my content, just leave questions down below. I would like to do a Q&A with my YouTube audience. I've done a Q&A with my Telegram audience, but if you guys leave some questions down below, I'll choose some appropriate ones and I'll put them up in my next video. So thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate all of you watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.